ऑडियो कट कर लो। वहां पर सुंदर है।
Hi, Sachit.
Hey, hi, Sanjay. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you doing?
Good, man.
Okay, we are awaiting the other panelists.
Is my audio clear enough?
Yes.
Cool. Are you excited?
Hi, Sri Ranjani. Hi. Shri, this is Sajid.
Hello.
And Sajid, this is Shri.
Hey, hi, Sri.
Yeah. Is it okay? Is it okay if we call you Shri? Shri Ranjani is quite long.
Sri Ranjani is too long. You can say Ranjani. She seems like not
Very
even to me.
done.
I think presentation is a good idea to do
Sorry, I can't hear you pretty clearly.
okay, that might be a good one to test. Do you want me to wear earphones? Is it still difficult to hear?
Right now, it's okay.
I was wondering if a presentation would be nice or should it just be a talk?
I think let's have a simple talk because I don't know if you'll have the time. True, because I think you have gone through the questions which I had put through, no? You had put in a suggestion yesterday. Yeah. So I think it'll take us the entire 30-35 minutes to go through them.
Sure. No,
So
in
maybe
the
if
10
you can
minutes.
Yeah.
In the 10 minutes, is it good to have something visual or not is what I was wondering.
If you have any toys on hand and you can talk about them while we are doing our talk, great. So that will be the visual itself. I think Sajid is going to do something similar. Yeah.
Okay.
Abir is going to join us very soon. So I don't know what he's going to do, but
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. I went through your website. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
I was very curious now.
So you haven't come to Bangalore, I presume.
Sri Ranjani, can we have some more light?
I tried to get the light on my face. Is better? No? Should I get a lamp?
Be good. It will be great if you could.
Let me try.
Okay. Hi, Abir.
Does this put some light on my face?
Oh, much better.
Seems very iffy, offy.
That's kind of dramatic, actually.
Hi, Abir.
Abir, you're muted.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah.
Oh, wait. Is that better now?
Yeah, much better. Abhi, did you get the chance to go through the questions?
Yeah, I did. I have them.
Great. All fine. Great. I've added one common question towards the end. I think if you see the document, you will be able to see it.
Where are the questions?
Yesterday, the link which I had shared, the day before. So the first question is, what is a board game to you and your fondest memory of board games? Oh, yeah.
I've dropped the link in the chat.
I think it has come directly to me.
Oh, sorry. Okay. My bad.
Yeah.
If someone has to watch this, they have to go to the Ahmedabad Design Week website, then
Live
get
event.
into the hall.
Yes. We are at Hall 1.
Okay. Oh, website. Go here. Go here.
It's just that when we are going to talk, we'll have a live experience, whereas it will be a 20-second lag for the people watching.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if we make a mistake, we have 20 seconds.
But the thing is, then they'll see us correcting the mistake as well. Because we have broadcasting live, but we don't have a live editing.
Yeah.
So, have you all been?
Very well.
Good.
Great. So what will happen is my colleague Anahita, she'll give a short intro of the panel and short intros of each of you, and then we'll get into the discussion. Honest.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are these all the games that you built, Sajid?
Yeah, we've designed all of these.
Oh.
You should see the website.
Yeah, and we're designing more actually. We are completely into education. We tackle mathematics to
Okay.
games. Yeah, but then we design the games in such a manner that they're proper games and not like children shouldn't run away seeing maths over there. So
Yeah.
a lot of layering done on top of it. It's super fun.
That's civic education for me.
Sorry,
Yeah.
what education?
Civic education.
Yeah.
Civic. Right. Yeah.
That democracy and like social sciences and all of that
Yeah.
have their own language, have their own, like you cannot use like Euro style and German style board game techniques to teach an Indian audience.
Correct.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like you cannot use Azul and like Splendor and Catan mechanics to explain the Battle of Panipat,
Yes.
because the because the Battle of Panipat had its own sort of history, has its own the battle had its own mechanic,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like this one size fit all gaming is like sort of against education,
Yeah.
which is like, yeah, so
We should definitely talk about this. Also, like what we've realized,
yeah,
Indian consumers, they want something quick, easy, dirty. Okay, kholo,
yeah,
setup karo, khelo, nikal jao, you know.
I think
ha,
that is still a changing phase. No, in India, I think board game enthusiasm has picked up
Yeah.
in many different ways. I feel.
no, which is also very interesting because I think so. All of 2019, I followed the election. So I was running from town to town, village to village, playing board games. And what we realized is that, and I think if you go to like a Bal Vidya Bhavan, like I went to bloody rural Bihar because our game is in Hindi, and we found that there is a hunger for something like this. Um, but because printing is so goddamn expensive in India, uh, and yeah, we don't have distribution channels. I just don't know.
No, I'll tell you a simple thing. Something like a dice is so difficult to get in India. We
Yeah,
lucky before this whole shutdown thing happened, we ordered like a big lot from China, just white dice, and then you can print it over here.
ah,
But it's such a
yeah,
big challenge to get simple things like these. And getting this in wood, the experience changes, you know. So all these things do.
yeah,
So no matter how much
When you have a quantity, it is still a possibility. And today, machine-made wooden dies are also possible. But I understand when you say it is difficult to get dice like China, which is the problem, I feel, comparing it to China. I think that cost is something we will never be able to provide with using work from our own country.
On the first day, we had a session with the president of TITMA, Toy Association. So I'm not. So he was saying the dice, we don't get dice in India at all. All of it, almost 99% of it is imported from China. That's a big issue. Okay, Anahita is here. She is my colleague and she is the anchor for us for the day.
hi Anahita.
Hi everyone, I'm
Hope you're having a good day.
Can we see Anahita?
She's there.
Oh, yes.
Hi.
Hi.
All right.
Just put the phone on silent.
Oh shit, my phone has to be on silent.
So we go live in 10 seconds, everyone.
I want something.
He's on phone. Okay, hello and welcome everyone to our first panel discussion of the day, the serious fun of play, ideation of board games. Be it simply a medium of recreation or as a key learning aid, board games stimulate our imagination and critical thinking while helping us develop interpersonal skill. Almost every facet of human life can somehow or the other be imagined as a board game. This panel today will delve into how games came to be, how a game is developed, right from a germinate idea to a successful marketable product, and the impact and prospects of board game in the coming times. Please welcome our first panelist for today, Mr. Abir Kapoor, a journalist, game designer, and author from New Delhi. Our next panelist, Sajid, the co-founder and creative director of Luma World, spearheading the product design and content creation division at Luma World. The last panelist is Sri Ranjini GS, founder of Kavare in Bangalore, a quaint store and an engaging space to indulge in and create playtime memories that are far removed from the adulteration of plastic or technology. The session is moderated by my colleague and friend, Mr. Sambit Kumar Pradhan, a multidisciplinary design educator with a wide spectrum of interest in the fields of design, art, and performance. He is currently an assistant professor in the School of Communication Design at the United World Institute of Design in Gandhinagar. Over to you, Sambit.
Shukriya. Namaskar, everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel. I think we should have some fun. So, great. So what we'll do is have a very short, quick video from Luma World, from Sajid. After that, we'll have a very short, quick talk by Kavade from Sri Ranjini. And then we'll go proper into the panel. Can you please cue the video, please? Okay, before we go ahead, I think the common denominator we have amongst all of us is our love for games, especially board games. So I would like each of you to share your fondest memory of playing a board game. I would like Abir to go first.
I love this game called Splendor. I like even during the pandemic, I think the moment it got done, a few friends of ours, like the first lockdown that got lifted, we picked up our box of Splendor and we were just going from each other's house to house playing. So after a point, what it became was that every weekend, the respite that we would get from being locked in at home would be to locked in another person's house playing Splendor.
Nice, nice. Sajid?
Growing up, I think we played a lot of Monopoly, Uno, chess, along with my cousins, friends. And what I like about board gaming is different personality traits come out, right? And right now, one game that we really love in our office is called Coup. It's a card game based on deduction, and it's insane. Like the game
It's
mechanics
so good.
building onto you, and it's crazy. You guys have to try it.
But it's
Ranjini?
also, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
it's Chor Police Sipahi, the old game.
Oh, Raja Mantri Chor Sipahi.
Yeah.
It's Raja
Yeah.
Mantri Chor Sipahi.
Yes. Great. Ranjini? You are muted, Ranjini.
Raja Mantri Chor Sipahi, and it gets converted to fruits and vegetables and everything else.
Name, place, animal thing.
Yeah.
Name, place, animal thing. This categories is another one which has been our hot favorite at home.
Yeah.
But if I talk of memories of board games, it would be Chaukabara for me for sure, because that was one game that we sisters and neighbors, we used to play like mad kids during our summers. And what was happening is the set of shells that we would play the game with instead of dice, that we had another little game that came as part of it. In Kannada, we call it Kaimel Kashi. And that is a game where we would have, our people would even tear open our skin to grab hold of that dice, the shell. So much fun, so much fighting. And
with me, it has been... there was a lot of the introduction was Snakes and Ladders, of course, Samp Sidi. From Samp Sidi, Raja Mantri Chor Sipahi. We used to have this little game which we used to play in the backbench of the classes. We used to play cricket. So you open your book, all the even numbers would be runs. So we'll have a proper test match tournament going on while the classes were going on in the front as well. And of course, there was Scrabble, the good old Scrabble. I think one of the game... Scrabble is a reason for my wife and I to bond much more stronger. She was not at all a Scrabble person, and now she is a very competitive player. So I get to see a new side of her when we play Scrabble. Okay, this question I would like to pose to Ranjini. You work primarily in the field of traditional games. So in a way, it kind of makes you a historian of sort for games of India, especially India, in terms of games. So could you just tell us, what is about these ancient games which is so fascinating, and how do we find a relevance for these in today's day and age?
Sure. Thank you, Sambit, for that. I'd say my pleasure here being with all of you today. I'm the black sheep here. I'm not a designer, but I come to this space purely because there's something in the ancient games that I definitely see, which I'm not ready to let go of, or for it to go out of circulation. But let me tell you a little story that happened many, many years ago, even before I started Kavade, which kind of would sum up what my vision is for Kavade, or what was an inspiration also to an extent. So this was some years back when a whole bunch of us, cousins, friends, we were traveling to the Ghats, Western Ghats, and we had booked 2 vehicles, and in a beautiful spot, one of our vehicles had a breakdown, and we had to pause. And it was those times when we didn't have rapid communication between 2 places. So we had to wait for a replacement vehicle to come, call him first of all, get a replacement vehicle. During that time, we all said, let's just take a walk just around here. And we're just going along, and it's there very clear in my head, that house that kind of I paused at. It might have been the tree, it might have been the house that was set deep inside the compound. I was just standing and gazing in awe of the place. And then suddenly the door opened from inside, right? And my urban instinct, I was a little scared. I didn't want to be interfering into their zone. And I kind of backed out. And from there, she said, in Kannada, she said, Yenamma. I'll just say this in English for all of you to understand. She just asked me, so what is it? She said. I said, no, very sorry. We're just here because our vehicle had a breakdown. And I'm here waiting for our replacement vehicle. And she said, why don't you come inside? I said, no, we're like a bunch of 12 to 15 people here. It might be a little too much. She said, don't worry, come inside. And the whole bunch of us just walk in that lovely pathway, and then the nice seater around. And as we are settling in, there's a little game board also etched on that place where we're all sitting. And before we know it, we have collected some of those seeds from her own backyard, from her front yard. And then some of us are playing the games, and the lady is offering us some coffee also, the best coffee I can tell you that I've had. And she offers us coffee, and we're sitting there for as long as a replacement vehicle comes. We are chatting up. We are talking about her life, our lives. We are playing games. So much that has happened. And I feel that bit of trusting ability, that simplicity is fast vanishing from our lives today. I can't even imagine letting someone inside my house like that, right? And I do definitely feel our ancient games kind of give space for that kind of interaction where there isn't too much required from either parties. The games can be created just around you. You can draw it, you can play it with the pieces, the twigs and seeds you have around yourself, and have this wonderful conversation with people, which I feel is the essence of playing. It's not about winning or losing. For me, that whole environment that is created where an older person, younger person, a boy, girl, they're all involved in something together, having fun. That I feel our games really lead to very, very beautiful. And I've seen that come across alive in a lot of our engagements with people, even in the urban streets of Bangalore, when we've brought out the games for people to play. And that's something that Kavade has been for me. That's what kind of made, it keeps me going even today when somebody calls me and says, hey, you know what, I need another game. My mother, who's 93-year-old, cannot have enough of Pagde. I want a game that is longer. So there is this game that you can play for 2 hours at a stretch. And she's saying, just 4 days back, she calls and says, can you make a slightly bigger version of the same board game for us? And those are little things that really keep me going. So
great.
Apart from this,
yeah, please continue. You're saying something.
And I feel a lot of other things that our games lead to us is it kind of expands a larger aspect of humanity. For one, it helps us to get rooted. You understand where a game comes from, why was it being played at that time, what were the game implements they used. If they used bones, it is a certain ecosystem in which they lived, because of which they used those materials. And those kind of learnings, I feel, really helps us get stronger bonded with our own spaces. And so I very strongly feel, as much as it's important engaging in our present, right, it is very important to understand our history, our roots, and it gives me at least a reasoning as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. Do I want to change something? Is there a need to change it? Those are the questions that get answered for me. So play is not really just a trivial thing that
of course not.
we need to spend time.
No, play is serious. Play is really serious.
Yeah.
Sajid, for over the past decade or so, there has been a trend of board games and games, largely game and play, featuring in education. And even now the government is recognizing slowly that it has to be curricular, not just an extracurricular or co-curricular activity. So with your work with Luma World, could you shed a little light on the process of how education is so seamlessly incorporated into game design and gameplay?
Sure. I just like to go back to Ranjani's words that, play is inclusive, and that is the beauty of any kind of play. No matter what your skill levels are, no matter what your knowledge levels are, it's for everyone, right? No matter what your background is. And that is something we also believe in. We focus mainly on experiential learning, critical thinking, real life application based skills. And the base is still academics. Right now, we're tackling mathematics through games. Of course, now through the new education policy, there's a lot of focus on play-based learning, which, of course, things like Montessori education, they were focusing on already. There's a lot of stickiness that happens with the child. I mean, every child has their own way of grasping knowledge. And we've seen this through research also. Before we actually started product development, we spent like a year or so just researching. Our main stakeholders are parents, teachers, mentors, schools, as well as kids, like kids being the center for us. And there was nothing that was like, there were not many products that were from a child's point of view. Like, how do I want to learn, right? That was the main question we were trying to solve. Like, as adults, we're like, hey, this is good for you, or this is good for you. That's how we go shopping. But then, do we really ask a child, what do you think will suit you? Like, some children love to read and learn. Some children love to write and practice and learn. Some children just love to play, just love to be outdoors and carry on their learning. So every learner is different. And this is an aspect we try to focus as well. Although the games being the center of attraction for Luma World. Would you like to understand the process right now, or is that the next question for you? Sorry.
Yeah. I was saying we can. Why not?
Okay.
Because next up, in contrast, we have a very interesting process of Abir's work as well. So it will be a good, maybe a little comparison which we can have. It will be interesting.
Perfect. So as I mentioned earlier, we focus mainly on mathematics, and of course, around that, there are life skills, there are moral values that get incorporated. I think any game that you play will always have these factors. When I say mathematics now, we've completely mapped the learning objectives that a child for a particular age group needs to know. And these are based on Common Core standards. They're applicable anywhere globally. That's another thing we try to do. Like, the products are modular. So if you think your child is suffering at fractions, you just introduce them to a fractions game. You don't have to go like completely back or completely yet. Like, the child doesn't need to miss out on anything. So you have your learning objectives defined. Then the game building process starts on top of this. You figure out, okay, are there products that exist on something like this? What are the different game mechanics being used? What is a game mechanic that will be friendly for children? Things like that. Like, you can't have a heavy strategy game for a third grader, like 8+-year-olds. So you want it to be like super quick and dirty to understand. Just set it up and start playing. We focus a lot on the playtime also, like 15 to 30 minutes, max 45 minutes, because otherwise children get easily bored. And again, this is all based on research. We heavily test our games with children during the game mechanics phase also. But when we do that, we also need to add a layer of theme on top of it, because otherwise your feedback is going to be skewed, because they will give feedback on based on what they see. Again, the feedback for us is also a lot of observation. Like, for example, young kids, they usually don't fan out their cards and sit like that, because it's very difficult for them. So they like to lay it out in front of them. So then we figured out, hey, why not we keep some of our games open card games? Because now what's happening is not only you are trying to solve your problem or make your move, but the others are also helping you in that process. Hey, why don't you try this? And children do that. They're not that competitive in the primary age group bracket. And so this is also helping bring a weak child on par with the knowledge levels of the other kids they are playing with. We try to balance, along with academics, we have like we try to balance luck and strategy, because you don't want it to be too heavy on strategy. Then like the smartest players will always win, or adults will always win. You want to keep the luck element there, so that, even a weak child will now get the kick of winning, and they're like, hey, I can also do this, right? And that is something very crucial for us. One, like our main secret sauce, which was told to us by Cyril Dijon, the art director of Ticket to Ride. He was visiting us, and he's like, my secret sauce is, will I want to play this game again? And will I want to play this game again right now? If you can solve this question, you've created a super epic game, right? And of course, not all your games are going to be hero games. So we also need to focus, okay, which are our hero? Of course, you're going to give like 100% to everything, but you need to figure out which ones are going to be like your top sellers, which ones will, work globally. Another thing we focus are keeping, gender neutrality. That is very important for us. Someone had recently asked us, like, are your games applicable in rural India? Some of them probably are the way they are, but then some of them maybe not right now, because we use a lot of themes like magic, space, and sometimes based on what society we are in, they are frowned upon. So yeah, I think I've covered it all in a very short span of time.
So, as you had also mentioned once, sometimes some games are used as assessment tools. So,
yeah.
Are you mentioning that in terms of a qualitative or a quantitative, or maybe a combination?
It could be a combination. So, for example, like one of our games, Galaxy Raiders, right? You have these type of boards on which you have a center planet, and then you have moons around them. You get number cards. Your dice has different operations on it, plus, minus, addition, plus, minus, multiplication, division, and any operations. And then you have different number cards, which you use a pair to form a number. So you're doing X minus Y, X plus Y, X into Y, and you're doing a back calculation now. Now you can actually easily spot, oh, my child is suffering at division, or my child is running away from multiplication. Because in any operation, they will always use a particular operation they're comfortable with. And if they don't have the number, if they don't have a power card, which is like any number, whichever one, then okay, I need to focus a bit more on this. Similar to like fraction also, you can see, okay, they can identify fractions through, objects and stuff, but pie chart is difficult, or the bar graph is difficult. So these are the things that we've observed.
Okay, great. Interesting, very interesting. Abir, so the game you developed is, it revolves around a theme which is, it's sort of a polarizing theme, and sometimes it's even often called a national pastime or a national obsession, depending on what time of the year or what time of the government we are talking about, the Indian elections, of course. So please take us through the process of your game.
So I would like to just start off where I think Sajid ended, which was the most fascinating aspect of it, which is that what games teach you, or what games enable, is they help you move from stated preferences to revealed preferences. So what that means is that a child could say that, I'm good at multiplication, but the game will actually reveal how good or bad the child is at multiplication. Or in the case of Ranjini, it's how good you are at patience, how good you are at playing a long game. But I have a question for Ranjini, which I will ask at the end of my um, whatever I'm speaking right now. But what I'm saying is that what games allow you to do is move from stated preferences to revealed preferences. Now, that is the most interesting thing that happens when you play games, when you interact with resources, when you interact with ideas, thoughts, points, systems. You are now basically in a simulation, a microcosm of how people are and how they react. Now that was very, very interesting, because I'm a journalist. I'm not a game. I am not a designer. Games are something that I chanced upon, like in a way that was the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. Now, when I was building the poll, what we started doing was we started thinking about how will you be able to get people to talk about issues and elections and get them to understand the entire process, right? Because the idea of democracy is, and because we deal with a lot of philosophy, and what Sajid said was a lot of philosophy, what Ranjini said was a lot of philosophy, where like Sajid was building on the ideas of equity, was building on the ideas of, fairness, equality, all of that. And Rajini's was a lot of anthropology. So at the end of the day, we are social scientists. If we don't want to be, we're all social scientists, and we're working in this space. So from that perspective, it became with the clear objective of giving people a vocabulary of the Indian elections. How would you allow people, and while we have both an urban and a rural audience that we were going at, during the research, what we found was, well, urban India needs it more than rural India. Because we, through the game, were able to tell a difference in democracy between state to state. How Gujarat differs in terms of money, argumentation to Maharashtra, to Madhya Pradesh, to Delhi, to UP. So in our game, we have money, we have policy, we have problems, and we have campaigning cards. So in the campaign cards, you'll be able to do dirty things like, cause a riot or spread fake news or stitch together forward, backward caste alliances, something that people don't understand how it sort of plays out and how central these concepts are to an election anywhere. Um, so in Gujarat, for example, they will not touch money. They will try to curry favors without actually dealing with the money. May it be hypothetical money, may it be real money. It's a sort of, I will do it, but count it as a favor. In Uttar Pradesh, for example, they will give you more money, and then at every point there is so much money that's going around on the table. People are taking each other's, passing it on. Even to support an argument, they are trading money. Maharashtra is a deliberative space. You have lots of people talking a lot about, it is a language of deliberation. So young kids in schools and colleges are just going at it, arguing with each other. In Tamil Nadu, where you have deep set gender access barriers to politics, you will see women will pick a simulation more than men. So women will take care of the product. They will go through with it. They will measure, they will argue, they will talk. Men will just dismiss it. So through this game, we were able to learn a variety of things about democracy. And I think that was one of our objectives, was to provide a vocabulary. Um, what and how we arrived at this game was that we wanted to, working as a journalist, I really wanted to see how all of our work that we do in terms of information fact finding, there is so much that is being discussed in the government, there is so many things that are being done in the government, that how do people interact with that. So we started looking at real things. We started looking at parliament questions. We started looking at political party manifestos, not now, but for the past 25, 30 years. So what we did was, we just made a list of all the issues that are there, and and all the solutions that political parties put. So the first part is just a problem solving game. And then what we started interacting with was then a given language um, of politics. Now there are two sort of games. One is the Euro style, German style games, which are very resource centric, right? You only talk within the mechanic of the game, but that is not politics for us. You can't push the Indian people to be like, roll dice six, okay, now Maharashtra is mine. There is no sense of joy that comes into a simple, like, roll dial six. My policy gives me 12 points. This is how much I get. Right? That is removing the human aspect from a deeply human process. So we brought in argumentation, where we used the concept of deliberative democracy, of how you need to talk to each other at any given point. And the player takes all rules. First, they are the people who draft the manifesto of political parties. Then there's the spokesperson going on TV and trying to convince other people about their position. So at some point you're a spokesperson, at some point you're a voter, and then you're the political strategist. Then you're Amit Shah. Then trying to buy out MLAs, trying to uh, field certain candidates in a certain space, do some amazing electioneering and all of that. So the game simulates and pushes you in all three scenarios. And the crux of it is conversation. Because if you remove the dialogue from Indian politics, then what is left? If you are not talking to each other, so and I think it does what I think all three of us want. Because what Sajid's video said was family, and Ranjani was like, you spend time in a non-digital environment, and you spend time talking to each other about things that matter. So it was what we did was to take these difficult conversations and push them. So we went to we went to Bagpat in Western UP to a school where we were playing in a girls' school, and a girl comes running to us and saying, "This game makes me believe that I can be a politician. Can I really become a politician?" And we were like, "Sure, absolutely." We were playing in Nasik with a bunch of social organizations, and they were like, we do not have tools to go into our countryside and engage in a political manner. So I gave them games. Or where we were in a South Delhi school in Sardar Patel, and some boy comes running and says that I haven't found a tool to talk to my dad about my politics, and he's what, 16 or 15, and he's like, can I get this game? So there is a social purpose to gaming. There is a step away from technology to gaming. And but the most important part of, say, building games, and I think Sajid and Anjali will agree with us, is the language of gaming. It is the words that derive and determine your mechanic. So I like to end with asking Ranjini a question: is that in these traditional games, the verbs of play, the language that is used. So, for example, we're building a game on the internet to acquaint people on how to be citizens or digital citizens online. So the internet has its own sort of click, push, forward, back, send, all of these. What are the verbs that you encounter in your traditional games? And that is all that I could think of.
I'm not very sure I understand what verbs we are talking of. Can you be a little more elaborate on that?
So what is the theme of the game and what is the language? How do they, like, you roll a dice, you pick up something? Is there context to the elements? And are they sort of, as you said, that if there are bones, it's a region specific game. So is the language gaming to also determine from history, from the people that were there? When you were a Raja, you moving certain types of your own elements. So
Absolutely. I think there isn't one language that would be common across all the games, right? So if we were to talk about the different categories of the games, the race games by themselves have their own languages, as in terms of killing and rushing ahead. And then you have your dice, and then you're competing with your opponents in a different form for a different win. When you take strategy games, the luck element is removed from it. And then there is the thought conversations that are happening between the players. And there, I don't know if this could be a great example for what you're asking, but let me tell you, the evolution of chess, right? Which is pretty much agreed upon as an Indian game. What was Chaturanga earlier drew from the elements that were existing during that time, as in a war, the whole during 600 BC to 600 AD, I think the context of war and winning empires was very high. And it was during that time that Chaturanga came in supposedly through Chanakya's thought process. So the pieces, the Raja, the Mantri, the elephant, the horses are the the strategies that were used by different empires to win. And that was brought alive onto their board game. It was actually 4 different empires coming together to play a game. And it was using the dice also. There is a version where Chaturanga was played using dice. Now, after a point of time, to give you the context of at that time when gambling was rampant and there was a ban on gambling. So the dice was removed, and probably that's when the game evolved to being a pure strategy game without the involvement of dice. The mechanics changed as per the context of the country or the region. And then it has become the 2-player game that we are all familiar with. Of course, it has gone through a lot of changes. If you look at the Mughal times, the pieces were called rook, and the servant was called something else. So those names also you will see, and you'll be able to connect to that. Did that kind of answer what you were asking, Abhi?
Yeah. I think so. Like in some ways, that your time, your region, and even the mechanics and the language of movement is affected by the socio-economic or the socio-political setting that you are situated in.
Yes.
I think
So
what is
the entire
also Sorry, Abir, please.
No, go for it.
Yeah, what I find really interesting about traditional games is it is beyond, it tries to break the language barrier, because instructions were usually verbally communicated. When a new person is introduced to the game for the first time, they're just told. And they were so flexible that the rules are made on the fly a lot of times. Okay, let's do this, The major thing was bonding and having fun. So I was going through Kabaddi's shop, and I found so many of those games had no instructions. So they were just playboards. So once you know the game for the first time, and then it becomes like, okay, yes, you have the basic rules in place, but then you can make your own gameplay out of that.
That is a cross.
That I would really want to understand from Sajid and Abir also, because when I'm introducing games today, the older ones, and to people who have never played, we have to kind of list out the rules, make it interesting enough or small enough, compact enough, so that interest, I mean, that time
the learning curve.
Within that, the impact time within that, you have to be able to give the rules. And that has been a challenge. Even for myself as an individual, when I get a board game, I'd rather look at the pieces and try and figure out how to play, rather than going through a whole 3-page rules sheet. Right? I'm wondering how you guys crack that.
Abir, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is that a lot of us haven't cracked it. Rule books are perhaps the hardest thing to write.
Exactly.
But they're like big gaming companies have their own departments that do write rule books. But there is something, and this is something that we try to do with the poll, right? And the greatest example of this is Monopoly. I have not read the Monopoly rule book.
No,
how many of you, like honestly, raise your hands. How many of you have read the rule book?
I'm a little bit of a nerd,
okay.
So I have to read it.
But well, because the thing is that there are 3 clear components of game design. One is the theme, which is the story. One is the mechanic, which is the math, and one is the design, which is the way it looks. Now, when they all come together, it makes one game. So the story so games are one of the oldest form of oral storytelling. You have to create a story to tell. Chess is the story of kingdoms competing with each other. Monopoly is the story of, acquiring property. And through the poll, what we wanted to do was make electioneering and good electioneering a story that people can tell from one person to another. In this game, you have to do this, you have to argue, you have to build consensus, you have to do all of that. So one part of gaming is the entire story aspect of it. How you are able to build this world. So Dungeons and Dragons is absolutely fantastic for something like this. Or even why, and that is where I find the linking between Eurogaming and the mechanic and the theme a little problematic, because you know that you are doing math and moving things around. Your interaction is with objects. Your interaction is not with the story. So with Sajid, I would say that the math is the story that you have to tell. It is, and then that will have its own language. It will have its own verbs. It will have its own set of interactions that will be set. So you're telling a story of good math. So I would say that storytelling is so essential for games, is that as game creators, game proponents, we have to constantly tell a story.
So one thing we realized during our testing times were kids, when you give them a rule book, they're like, do I have to read this? And I'm like, yeah, otherwise, how do you play games? Usually they're like, nahi, bhaiya ya didi samjha degi. And so then we realized we need to make creative. First of all, the rule book needs to look like a storybook. And the other thing is your gameplay videos need to be cool, voiced over game rule videos, very, very quick, 7 minutes videos. That's it. So still, sometimes I get kids who watch these videos, they just scan the QR code and they watch them. Otherwise, sometimes it's parents telling them or their siblings telling them what the rules are. But it has happened that kids start making their own home rules also once they've gone through like the basic rule set. Then be like, acha, ek card ke badle I will draw 2 cards, or instead of removing 1 peg, we'll remove 2 pegs that way. So everyone has their own thing around. That happens with all games.
So we are almost at the end of our slot. I would want all of you to answer a very, it's not a quick answer, but I'll still want you to take a jab. So how do games contribute to the big real world problems of climate change, sustainability, and socioeconomic issues? So maybe if you have just one-liners to tell us, like from your own contexts.
I'd like to start on this one. As Abir mentioned, I think games are a great way to bond with people, right? To have a communication which otherwise you may not, otherwise you may be biased or, afraid of something. And games actually break these barriers. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Ranjini?
Yeah, I think so, Sajid. I agree with you. And I feel there are also places where it makes you vulnerable and intimate also at the same time. So that kind of is the space where we can, if needed, push in a learning experience about climate or math or subjects or anything else. Yeah. I feel it really gives space for that.
Abir?
Through what we've been doing, we've realized that a lot of people want to play more localized and more real and visible stories of their lives. So if you're able to transport and transplant these concepts into their everyday lives through play, I think it will send the message home clearer. So if someone in Delhi is able to play a Delhi-centric game on climate change, which impacts and provides the visual language of their everyday and the worst case scenarios that can happen, I think there is a hunger in India to play our own stories. And these stories are the stories of climate change, of sustainability, of all of that.
Great.
So I think that's mine.
Yeah.
Just another point that I very strongly feel about games is that it doesn't always need to have a learning outcome that is written out. I think it's great to play games for the fun of playing it also.
I have always felt that there is always a subliminal learning which is happening throughout. We cannot deny that. Subconscious and children are probably the most important, for the lack of a better word, target audience for us. So the sooner the early intervention. So games are the perfect icebreakers to introduce any of these concepts. And the sooner they are introduced to it, the sooner they become sensitized to it. So yeah, it has been a fantastic conversation. And I'll invite Anahita over now. But thank you very much. It was fantastic.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all for this very engaging discussion. And thank you, Sambit, for moderating this session. Abir, Sajid, Sambit, and Sri Ranjani, you all took us down the memory lane. And with all your talk of memories of the board games that we all have grown up with. The pandemic has definitely forced us to be indoors and revisit the board games of our childhood. And I personally hope that's here to stay and grow. Thank you all for sharing your individual observations leading to your contextualized design process for board games and toys and the relevance and need for it in today's world. So on that note, thank you again for being a part of the Ahmedabad Design Week 2.0. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.